We'll move on in our agenda this evening to item 5, reports on the agenda. And this evening, we have the Facilities Master Plan Report, and I believe Jeff LaRose is going to handle this for us.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. First, let me start by expressing how deeply sorry we are for the sudden passing of Mr. Brad Weaver, one of our custodians at Wilder Elementary. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the family, friends, and co-workers of Mr. Weaver. Board Policy 7100 requires that a facility master plan be prepared to assure that future considerations support educational programs and responds to community needs. The master plan is presented to the board annually and includes district enrollment, enrollment by grades, and enrollment projections. This spreadsheet shows the forecasted enrollment through FY24 by preschool, elementary, middle, and high. Last year's October total enrollment was 14,674. This year, for FY15, we increased by 48 students to 14,722, slightly more than what was forecasted. The forecast for preschool shows maintaining our current enrollment of 263 students. Elementary and middle are on a decline. High school is forecasted to grow the next 3 years with a decline starting in FY19. And district-wide, we are forecasting that enrollment will increase the next 2 years and start to decline from FY18 through the end of the forecast in FY24. In summary, the 10-year forecast indicates elementary enrollment peaked in FY12, middle school peaked in FY13, and high school is forecasted to peak in FY18. And overall enrollment is believed to have peaked in FY12. By the end of the forecast in FY24, we believe student enrollment will be at 14,236. When looking at enrollment by grade, the largest increase was in 9th grade, increasing 86 students, and the largest decline was in kindergarten, dropping by 66 students. In FY06, we had the largest kindergarten class, and in this slide, the numbers in red show that as this group continues through the system, they will remain the largest class through 12th grade in FY18. Looking at enrollment by school, the largest elementary increase occurred at Emerson and Hanby, a total of 74 students as a result of restoring the 2nd grade magnet program. The largest decline was at Alcott, dropping by 83 students, followed by Robert Frost, down 47 students. Alcott has been on decline since FY10, when enrollment was 719. At the middle schools, the largest increase was Heritage at 39 students. The largest decline was Genoa, 27 students. In high school, the largest increase was North, 111 students. Largest decline being South at 57 students. Each year, student capacities are calculated by building based on how each room is being utilized. The school building capacities are then compared to the actual enrollment as of October 10th. There are 4 schools shown as being over capacity. Faust, 19 students over, Blendon, 43, Heritage, 28, and Walnut, 21. This year, there are 5 students we overflow as compared to 61 students last year, 3 from Hawthorne and 2 from McVeigh. At our elementary schools, the average class size ranges from 20.9 at Whittier to 25.7 at Faust, Faust being the only elementary listed as over capacity. The FYN ethnicity breakdown per state classifications is white, 60.5%, black, 23.2%, multiracial, 7.3%, Hispanic, 5.6%, Asian, 3%, American Indian, 0.2%, and Pacific Islander, 0.1%. The top changes from last year are Hispanic and multiracial, each up 0.5%, and our white student population is down 1.8%. When comparing the minority enrollment of each school to the district total, 3 areas are not within the 15% of the total district minority enrollment. Alcott's white population is 1% above the upper district limit at 77%. Hawthorne's white population is 6% below the district lower limit at 40%. And Point View's white population is 8% below the lower district limit at 38%.
Jeff, before you go on, it might be helpful, because I'm not sure all the board members are familiar with that plus or minus 15 and some of the members of the community. Would you talk just real quickly about that plus or minus 15%, the origins of that, and how it plays into this particular piece?
At one time, the state board adopted a resolution that required each school to be plus or minus 15% of the district overall. So that was rescinded, I believe that was 2008. It was 2008. But we do continue to track ethnicity to this model. The reason it was rescinded is because as schools were making adjustments to get to the desired result, they found out that many districts were pulling from minorities, which it was deemed unconstitutional. So they're still looking to adopt some sort of model. It just hasn't been public as of yet. In middle schools and high schools, enrollment is within the 15% of total district minority enrollment. The economically disadvantaged district total, as measured by the number of students receiving a free or reduced lunch, increased 2.3% this year to 34.6%. Elementary is at 39%. There are 8 schools over 40%. The elementary schools are Amherst at 45.5, Charrington 42.7, Huber 61.8, Hawthorne 65.8, and the highest, Point View, at 78.4. 2 schools are on a downward trend. Amherst down 6.7% over the past 4 years, and Whittier down 20.4% over the past 6 years. Charrington had been on a decline from FY11 through FY14, but increased 7.7% this year to 42.7%. The highest upward change is Emerson, up 8.5%, and the greatest decline is Whittier, down 3.8%. The highest middle schools are Walnut at 40.9% and Heritage at 48.3%. The lowest is Genoa at 14.9%, and the highest high school is South at 37.5%, and the lowest is Central at 25.3%. If we apply the 15% rule to free and reduced, there are 5 schools outside of the 15% of the district total: Alcott and Genoa below, Hawthorne, Huber, and Point View above. The economically disadvantaged average annual growth over the past 10 years is 2%. Looking back to FY01, the highest growth occurred in FY09. Let's see. At 4.1%, and the lowest in FY12 at 0.1%. We are projecting to be over 40% in FY18. Special ed enrollment is down 26 students from last year. This does not include preschool or out-of-district students. The high was 1,862 in FY12, and we have been on a decline the past 3 years. Limited English proficient is up 35 students from last year, the high being in FY10, 1,332. And comparing current enrollment to our enrollment in FY01, and that's the year prior to our building expansion program that included building Alcott, Faust, and Central, our enrollment has increased 13.3%. Our minority student population is up 21.2%. The economically disadvantaged student population is up 27.9%. Limited English proficient up 6.9%. Students with disabilities up 2.9%. and our total building square footage has increased 38%. As these student demographics increase, so does the need for additional space. As part of forecasting enrollment, we need to stay abreast of any planned residential development within the district. We have received several calls about how the reserve at Walnut Creek will affect enrollment. This is a 148-unit apartment complex located on the southeast corner of 161 and Sunbury Road. Though it is surrounded by our district, it is part of Columbus, and thus it will not impact our enrollment. Now, located just a little further south on the east side of Sunbury is Sunbury Cove, where 28 single-family homes are currently under construction in the 250 to 320 price range. Anticipated completion is spring of 2016 and would impact Wilder, Blendon, and North. And this is a site plan of the development showing the 28 home sites. The Village at Central College is on the southeast corner of Central College and Sunbury. The developer is currently going through the approval process for 71 single-family homes and 240 multifamily units. The area falls within the McVeigh, Walnut Springs, and North attendance areas. The ravines at West Star, located on the southeast corner of Polaris Parkway and Old Worthington Road, will consist of 540 apartments. It is in Westerville, but it is not Westerville City Schools. This is just a plan we received from the city that shows what that development will look like. Hoff Road will be extending west of North State Street, featuring 41 patio homes for ages 55 and older, as well as 138 apartments. School attendance areas are Faust, Genoa, and South. And this is a site plan showing the 41 homes south of Hoff Road and the apartments on the north side. The Ravines of Westerville is located southeast of County Line and Cleveland Avenue on the west side of Hannawalt Road. Planned are 146 single-family homes to be constructed over the next 4 years in the 380 to 450 price range. The homes for Phase 1 are to be available in the fall of 2015. School attendance areas are Amherst, Heritage, and South. And again, this is a site plan showing the development. Fisher Development withdrew their request to build 335 single-family homes on the Minerva Park Golf Course site in July. So thus, we're just going to keep a watch on this area to see what happens. There are 3 planned uses for the land on the northwest corner of Warner and Ulrey Roads: a 250-unit apartment complex, an 85 to a 100-bed assisted living facility, and a 140 condominiums to be built by Ryan Homes starting in the 220s. School attendance areas are McVeigh, Walnut Springs, and Central. The Villas on Tussock is located west of Tussock Road between Hawkspear Drive and Hillmar Drive. 40 single-family homes are to be built in the Alcott, Genoa, and South attendance area. Romanelli and Hughes is the developer, and price is starting at $380. And that's a site plan of the homes going in. The Courtyards on Maxtown is an EPCON community on the north side of Maxtown Road, just west of Heritage Christian Church. 39 standalone condos are to be built as a 55 and older community, also within the Alcott, Genoa, and South attendance areas. And that is a site plan showing how that'll fit. And the last one that we have to report is London Crossing, located on the north side of Freeman Road, directly across from Freeman Park. 13 single-family homes are planned and are part of the Faustino and Central attendance areas. And that is a site plan of the 13 homes. So, student growth from new housing is projected to add potentially 293 students over the next 4 to 6 years. And we will use this information to determine if we need to update our current student enrollment forecast.
So you did not include the 293 projection in the other projection in the 14,000, whatever?
The 10-year forecast that was put together by Cropper and Associates last year, that is based on trend activity with home permits from the municipalities. So what we would like to do is, based on this newer information, to see if this is causing the trend to be higher than what they had forecasted. So we're going to take a look at that and see. Some of it is included, don't know how much of it is.
Okay.
As the current 5-year capital plan ends, the impact has increased our overall square footage by 48,000 square feet. Projects included the demolition of the modular classrooms at Wilder and North, replacement of North's land lab and the transportation facility, replacement of the press boxes at North and South, the biggest one being the purchase of this property, the East One property, and the sale of the 135, 145 East Walnut properties. Last December, as part of the master plan update, we recommended option C to the board that included using Emerson, Hanby, and Longfellow as schools of choice and using Central College for shared service opportunities to benefit families and students. And per these recommendations, we are pleased to report that this year we added second grades back to the magnet program at Emerson and Hanby, and next year's magnet program will restore first grades. Longfellow continues to be considered for all-day kindergarten or an expansion of our gifted program, and we are currently working with Barbara Wallace and plan to have more information to share at January's meeting when we present our capital improvement plan. And Central College is now the home of the Head Start preschool program for Westerville, operated by the Child Development Council of Franklin County and serving over 60 Westerville preschoolers. The program offers half-day preschool opportunities for economically disadvantaged families. Everything's set to go. We're just waiting on when they're opening. So it should be sometime this month, as early as sometime this week. So I wish I had a picture with the kids in it, but this is just showing one of the 2 classrooms that is set up for the preschoolers that is being used at Central College. Some of the space utilization projects for this summer include renovation of a classroom and the media center at Walnut Springs, designed to meet the needs of the next generation of students, adding an ADA classroom at Heritage to support the needs of our special ed students. And at Central, we are working with the Touchdown Club to construct a memorial pavilion adjacent to the stadium. This project is to be funded by Central's Touchdown Club. And the construction process will be very similar to the construction of the Paul Price Memorial Committee memorial at South Fieldhouse. This is a picture of where we're starting the existing media center at Walnut Springs. And this is a rendering of what we're currently designing, putting the construction documents together again for construction this summer. This is an exterior rendering of the proposed pavilion at Central. And this is an interior renovation.
Again, what is the purpose of that pavilion?
It's a memorial to those that have been supporters at Central that have passed. So there's a couple that are being discussed now by the Touchdown Club, Cindy Crow and Kirk Jakowski. But you can see each of those panels as more are inducted into that memorial. there's an opportunity to grow that program.
So it'll be used strictly as a memorial, not any,
It's a memorial as well as the bump out you see on the left side. That's designed to house the grills. So if you recall where the white tent that they have for the games, this is to replace the white tent. The bump out is for the grills, and then again underneath is the memorial with anticipating picnic tables for eating. And there's a fireplace, as you can see.
thank you.
Building utilization project that we're recommending for further review include the cafe experience for middle and high school students. We would like to explore the concept of a design that has more of a student union feel. Over the years, the need for instructional space has resulted in multiple building additions, but spaces like school cafeterias have not changed. Thus, they have accommodated more students within the same space. Whoops. At Point View, we would like to develop design options for the board's consideration that would include enclosing the classroom areas. We shall review additional space needs to support the expansion of our Pathways program, such as the static Fab Lab at one of our high schools. And we are requesting that we start planning for the renovation or replacement of some of our older facilities. The Ohio School Facilities Commission recommends planning for replacement at 50 years. The average age of our schools is 47 years, 9 being over 50, and 4 being over 80. The age ranges are 12 years at Central to 119 years at Emerson. And in addition to Point View, we would like to explore site utilization options at Central College, Longfellow, and Hawthorne. Central College and Longfellow being our smallest schools, and Hawthorne with the most available acreage to address the need for future space to accommodate additional instructional programs. This is instructional space at Point View that per school administration is not meeting the needs of our students or staff. Concerns that have been raised are lack of instructional, teacher, administrative, and dining space, lack of student storage, minimal natural light, students easily distracted without having classroom walls. Classrooms have to operate quietly so not to disturb adjacent instructional spaces, and safety concerns when performing lockdown drills. And in January, we plan to present the capital improvements portion of our facility master plan. We will present funding for the next 5-year plan and how it compares to the current 5-year plan. We shall share a scope of work for this summer along with a project schedule. We will review all-day kindergarten options as well as Point View's renovation options, discuss building renovation replacement program options, and present site options for Central College, Longfellow, and Hawthorne. Hawthorne, again, designed to support instructional program growth. So that concludes tonight's presentation. Thoughts, questions, discussion?
Questions?
I'd like to say thank you. That's a big job. I mean, there's a lot of work there and preparation and planning, and the board did have this material 2-3 weeks ago, but it's not online yet, is it? I looked today and I didn't think it's out there for the public to look at. Is that available to put it
We'll
on?
make sure. I was working on this over the weekend, so we'll make sure we get that out.
So it will happen?
Yes.
We can put it, okay. Thank
Absolutely.
you. That would be helpful. I think people would like to know statistics, if nothing else.
Sure.
You know, that would help. But thanks. There's so much here. I think we, as a board, need, some work session or some time to talk before Mr. LaRose gets too far along. And can we schedule one of our meetings maybe to be a work session or something?
Yes, we can.
There's a lot here, and a lot of money involved.
Yeah.
Here's what I'd suggest when you look at what Jeff gave us. I'd chunk it this way. First is the enrollment data, and you can look at the trends, you can look at the projections. The takeaways for me is if you look at enrollment, we're on this small decline, which even if those housing options aren't in place, 294 students over some number of years into that number isn't going to be a huge effect. It may affect a particular building, but I would say that your enrollment over the next couple of years looks to be pretty stable to what it is today, right? Aside from that, the one feature of our enrollment that is having an impact is that economically disadvantaged. If you could look at students with disabilities, or you look at our limited English proficiency over the last 5 years, those have remained kind of steady. But if you go to the economic piece, the economically disadvantaged, this district from 2001 has grown from fewer than 7% economically disadvantaged to 35%. And that is a different student body, and it hasn't, those demographics haven't distributed themselves across all schools evenly. So then when Jeff breaks out the data by building, you start to see those variances, like a point view with over 75% economically disadvantaged, and an Alcott or a Faust with much less than that. So that's an impact on instructional program needs and helping in that domain. Then when you look at building capacity, what you see is, although there's some tight spots as that large class size comes through, effectively, as your space stands right now, you have enough space for current programming. In fact, you have some space not being used right now, but for current programming and current enrollment, although there's tight spots, overall, you're in pretty good shape.
So is it a bubble at Faust?
The Faust phenomenon, the Faust has the decline or the up. I can't remember which one they were. So the class size average in Faust is more of a function of number of teachers to those students, not the building. So when you see class size average, think total number of students, total number of teachers, okay? So that's where that one comes from. The actual numbers across the whole building, that can be different. So if that was, you were talking about the class size number, the 25, yeah. So that's a little higher than we'd like to see across the building, but then you can have a range within classrooms. You could have a classroom with 20, you could have a classroom with 27. So that one, that's a staffing, that's not a building capacity. So you have those pieces in place. The use of some of those classroom spaces that he's mentioning, I think falls into that capital piece and programming. Because I think you've got to read it this way. To use those spaces against current enrollment means spending dollars for using space that under current programming doesn't seem a high need. But are there programming needs that we want to look at that bring value to the educational experience of our children, value to the community, or blank spots, blind spots, weak spots in our current academic program where that space starts to make sense to bring value? When you start to look at some of our academic data, that's where we start to look at things like the value of all-day kindergarten, which also has the opportunity for being somewhat of a revenue generator. It won't cover its own costs, but a tuition-based, you can sliding scale tuition-based all-day kindergarten program will bring in dollars, don't cover the whole cost, but does chip away at that cost. Gifted is another area when you look at our program and the number of kids we serve and how we serve them, we have some internal discussion about whether or not there's enough there yet to service all those kids. And so that's one of the other ideas. So that's where that's kind of the some of the takeaway points for us as we look at what you have that are going to play into. So having the numbers, seeing the enrollment, leading to capital plan for the next 5 years, so Jeff knows what we want to build, what we want to renovate. The other piece that's in there, and I encourage you to go back and look at the presentation again, is, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, he's really kind of getting at some enhancement of spaces. He talks about, you saw the pictures of the cafeteria at, the media center at Walnut Springs, the current one and the new one. That's about enhancing an educational space for kids, providing a more 21st century atmosphere with the tools and the kind of educational experience that kids should have in a modern day library, right? And that's what he's looking at there and saying, what's the impact on students there and what does that might mean across the board? He mentioned cafeterias, which oftentimes get used as educational spaces as well, right? Study hall,
Sure.
okay? Or just the human experience of eating lunch with 400 other students at the same time, right? Go watch a lunch at a high school or middle school on any given day and look at the environment and think about that interaction. I think these are some areas where we're looking at how might that play into our long-range plans down the path? So that's kind of the runway we're getting towards as we go towards capital plan. Now, the big thing in the capital plan, of course, would be the budget side of that. What does that look like? So, yeah, we wanted you to have that data ahead of time so you can drill down and see some of those. He pulled some of the highlights. I gave you a long-winded scenario summary of Jeff's presentation, but that's kind of the way we've looked at it. And I encourage you to pull it out, ask us questions. The capital improvement plan is slated for the second January meeting. So questions, we'll be happy to take them.
Just a couple. I want to echo Carol. I just really appreciate the massive amount of work that you and your team, I know it's a team, do. And I really want to say thank you for opening up with some compassion about Mr. Weaver. I just think that's important.
Thank you.
And a couple quick questions. They're going to seem disparate and not connected, but here they're connected, so just go with it. Which was the school that has the largest acreage available? Hawthorne?
Hawthorne.
Thank you. And you said that we are nearing 40%. I think it was like 38, 39%.
Free and reduced.
Economic disadvantaged, free and reduced. In the way you said it, that's based on the number of students who receive or who are eligible for free and reduced.
Well, they may be eligible, but if they're not sharing that information with us, that's not captured. So it's those that have.
Thank you.
So one thing that we've noticed is at the elementary level, it's 39%.
That's where I'm going. Okay.
Yeah, it's-
No. I want, and maybe you all already thought of this. As you get older, you're less likely to self-identify.
Correct.
And we saw that in the numbers. I mean, it's an obvious thing, but when we say that we have 40% at this point in time, my statement is that that I suspect that it is perhaps a little higher than that. And my question, Jeff, is from just your experience, what is that? What are the implications of that for a school district historically? Is there a certain percentage that you hit and then you say, now it's really going to start impacting you? Or is that not the case? Does the question make sense? You understand what I'm just curious.
You want me to take that one?
Want to take it?
There may not be precedent for that question.
There is, and I don't steal this because Jeff doesn't know, we've had conversations, but he builds, I teach, is that maybe the, so, and Jeff, to his credit, as someone who manages the operations side and facility side, has a wonderful talent for understanding what goes on in classrooms, so I don't want to diminish that. And he'll talk about research that looks at 40% as that kind of tipping point for effect on performance. I don't like getting stuck in that because it implies that it's a cause and effect, and it is not. I think the implications for us, and we already know this, if you ask any of our classroom teachers, they know this, the impact in that is it really means we got to hone our practice and be very effective and very efficient about how we go about delivering instruction. And we're blessed, as you saw, with several master teachers today, with a teaching staff who gets it. When you look at our performance, so let's look at that. I said the demographics changed from 2001 of less than 7% economically disadvantaged to approaching 40. Yet if you look at our report card results, overall, there's sore spots in there, yes, but overall, we really haven't fluctuated much in our performance. If anything, we've gotten a little bit better each year on our performance. Performance index would be a good measure of that one, indicators. We have work to do in gap closure. Most of that is with LEP, limited English proficient, and students with disabilities. That's where our biggest gaps are. We have smaller gaps nonetheless with economically disadvantaged and some of our other subgroups. So it adds pressure to the system, and it means we really have to be honed in and focused. So our teaching learning roadmap that we listened to recently, I think a big part of that was student-centered instruction. That's the kind of approach we need to have in order to meet the needs of more kids who are coming from situations in which we got to move them faster. Value-added data, our progress, our growth data, is another indicator of how we're doing with those students. That's where we had an A on our last report card, and we've done very well with some of those students. So that's the pressure point, and it means we got to be sharp in order to continue to meet kids' needs. And the other end of that is, that's the input, and the other end is the output, is the measuring stick that we keep chasing, that keeps getting moved, and our performance that we have to do. So it's quite the dynamic. But like I said, you know, we saw 6 or 7 teachers tonight, master teachers. We have a very talented staff, very committed principals, families that want the best for their kids. This is part of that programming question. Goes back to, okay, where are you going to put your resources? What's the population?
Yeah, and I, whether it's whether it's an actual tipping point or it's anecdotal, or whether there's really statistics behind data underneath it, my thinking is that if in fact it is a significant measure, then that will help us, I think, look at down the road, not just facility land use options, but actual, just like on-the-ground programming options. Where can we best serve these kids at the beginning of this journey, you know? What are the options and choices that we can lay out for I don't think it's a generalization, for economically disadvantaged family systems, so that we can help them become successful?
The early literacy piece, the early intervention piece, early grade level intervention piece is a huge one, and that's why you've heard me talk about all-day kindergarten as an option for us. I'll give you another set of data, and this is a smaller something that we watching the other day. One of our elementary schools was presenting their work on third grade reading guarantee, and their monitoring of those kids' progress on those reading intervention plans that they're required to have. And the interesting thing was that as they reported out the data, they reported that 25% of the students that came to them this year, of the students who ended up on reading intervention plans this year at that school, 25% of them weren't with us last year. That's the mobility factor, right? So that's another variable in this equation about what's the best thing to do. Early intervention, younger grades, literacy, both math and word literacy, as I would put it, are critical to success moving on.
Thank you. Very helpful.
So just a couple of things come to mind going through the numbers. The analysis, predictive analysis, is problematic. It's complex. It's difficult. I think that for a long time, a lot of focus at the board and the community level has been on quantitative analysis, which is relatively easy, right? What's the number? What's the number going to be next year? What's the number after that? We draw a curve, right? And there we go. But even with the quantitative analysis, I'm a little concerned about some of the terminologies we use. And basically, if I looked at the numbers, we're trending, if you add the 293, you don't add the 293, we're basically trending between 1% and 3%, either above or below. So I'd agree with you. That's stabilization, right? If we talk to our colleagues in city government, they'll agree with us. We're approaching that point of being landlocked, right, from a developmental standpoint. So we need to ask ourselves, from a qualitative analysis standpoint, are our facilities, are our services, are our programs located where our students are, right? I think, the glaring example of this is the lack of a middle school in the southern end of the district. This is a huge continuous problem that generates additional problems, further down the line, and it's done so for this school district for a long time. I think that we have the facilities, we have the property, we don't need to, be exploring other options. We need to look at, are we purposing and repurposing our facilities and our current properties in a way that's servicing the student population based upon where student concentrations reside today. So, I understand that's a very operational mindset to be looking at it, but I don't think that we can really deliver, home runs on the curriculum and the program if we're continuing to struggle with some of the structural issues that, we now as a board have an opportunity to address and take a look at. And hopefully, again, model it based upon the fact that we have reached a stable student population. That's a good thing. If you look at those numbers in single digits, we would have to see a mass exodus of 800 families or a mass introduction of 800 families in order to swing into the double-digit change category either way. That's not going to happen. We're not going to see a huge outflow or inflow like that, over the next several years. So this gives us a great platform for the next multi-year plan. I agree with you, Dr. French. This is an opportunity for us to take advantage of that because I think that we need to be very planful about it. But how those, other factors and how those different variables factor into the equations, I think that's going to be a topic for a lot of conversation because I don't expect it to be a non-complex exercise for us to try and look in that crystal ball and see what it's going to look like out of the next 5, 10, and 15 years.
Jeff, can you go back to the point view picture real quick? Because I think that kind of highlights what you're getting at.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
So here's a building, 260 so students. If you look on his enrollment capacity, they're fine, right? That's 75% free and reduced lunch. That's the highest free and reduced lunch building, right? Look at that space without the walls. Very popular in the 70s.
I was going
Yeah.
to say, remember, that used to be the greatest thing.
Completely messed up my
Education
elementary
without
years for me because I was one of those kids that would have, I'm an adult, that would drive me. So we've had conversations dating back to last year with the staff and parents there about that space and starting to look at it and the appropriateness of that space for those kids that attend there and whether or not that's the right thing. So that's the kind of question that's on the table, that qualitative versus quantitative. Quantitative says, you don't need to do anything with it. Qualitative says, I'm not so sure that's the best way for those kids to be educated in that space and to support those teachers. So that's
Another
the
thing
kind of issue we're
we
gonna-
need to look at, and yes, even with the flatlined enrollment, going back and look at the usage of those spaces. Over the years, we've taken a lot of storage space and converted that to instructional space. And as we've looked at the schematic drawing for laying out classrooms in this facility as is, you're looking at classroom sizes anywhere to 500-600 square feet, which OSFC's recommendation is 900. So there's a disparity in classroom size, but we're saying one size will fit all. So we're just using the methodology of 25 students in a classroom regardless of size. So I think we need to go back and revisit that, places like Point View being an example.
Tracy, anything you'd like to say?
No, I'm glad we're looking at Point View. After spending some time in there, it absolutely needs to be addressed. So, thank you.
I want to piggyback on that. I know that we all have had the opportunity to be, Point View, we need to take action. It's just that simple. It's very clear. It's a school design that aged, out and past, curriculum, and, it's a design that is no longer, relevant within the educational sphere. It wasn't relevant probably, the year after, that theory was promoted. We need to do something about it, right? And I think that we're resolved to that collectively. I don't mean to speak for the board, but, again, if you walk through this building, and then we think about it again, when we look at those qualitative measures, we look at everything that's being put on us from a performance standpoint, park, all these types of issues, we can't even figure out how to configure the space to be able to accommodate those demands, not just the student needs, not just the community and parent needs, but, the state government's needs as well in this space, right? So I like your point. Quantitatively, it would look like there's not much you need to do there. Qualitatively, it looks like there's a lot that we need to do there.
There is, I concur with what's been said. There's a lot of research, there's a lot of knowledge that tells us that children who are in poverty or near poverty need qualitatively different instructional programming and different approaches to instruction. The issues of mobility are huge and have a significant impact not only on that particular student, but on the classrooms in which they flow in and out of. And also there are issues as regards the family resources that are available to the students, and there are issues as regards early development. So when we look at the need to examine all-day kindergarten and what options we may be able to develop with all-day kindergarten, that is very important to do, just as it's extraordinarily important for us to continue to beef up our relationships and our alignment with pre-K, especially when we look at the pre-K programs that serve economically disadvantaged students. Westerville has become a very remarkable success story. We gripe about the way the state analyzes some of its data and so forth, but if you look over the last decade and a half of the change in student population here, and you look at the maintenance of very high standards and high reaching of those standards, you can say pretty unequivocally that there is significant success going on here as regards instruction. But we do have some problems, well, opportunities, as we look at our facilities. When we look at changing point view, I think many of us, as we have been in there, have felt the almost oppressive need to do something, and to do something sooner rather than later. That's clearly on the discussion block. Also, as we look at how to most effectively utilize the facilities that we're not using at this point, that's another big deal. I would point out that one of the slides that you put up about option C that was determined in December of last year, where it said what would go on in those buildings, that was an option for discussion at that point. We're still talking about what's going on in Longfellow and Central College, so don't everyone run out and say you know exactly what's going to happen to Longfellow at this point in time. We'll still be doing some talking. I think that, Carol, your idea about a session focused on the facilities planning and where those things are going, I think that we do need to schedule another meeting for that. So let's talk about how we might do that very early in the new year in conjunction with the report at the second meeting in January. Also, I would ask the board, before we ever get to that, to be thinking of a couple of things. One in particular, the capital improvements budget is woefully insufficient for the things that we're talking about doing. And that has happened over the course of the last few years as some decisions were made regarding how capital improvements would be funded. We're going to need to take a very close look at the dollars that are available for capital improvements. We're going to have to identify any ways that we can adjust that make sense to the capital improvements budget. One thing that I do want to ask people to take a look at, and Dr. Kellogg and Bart, I'd like you to look and see how this would impact things. It would not solve the problem, but it would provide at least some extra. A number of years ago now, we moved the purchase of curricular materials, textbooks and so forth, out of the general fund into the capital improvements fund. That was done at that time because the capital improvements fund offered us the better ability to pay for them, and the general fund at that time did not offer us that ability to pay. Things have shifted a bit now, wherein the capital improvements fund can no longer support placing textbooks and those curricular materials in the capital improvements bucket. So I'd like to take a look, ask you to please take a look, see what assistance that might be able to provide. As I say, we know up front, right off the bat, before we ever even talk about it, it won't be enough to do what needs to be done, but it can provide a shift in funding allocations, if you will, as regards those materials. So there are a number of things to look at. There are a number of things that we need to do. Some of them we know immediately what we need to do, and you've begun laying those out. Others will require us to have additional discussions around what sort of programmatic changes we wish to engage in. And that is on us immediately when we come into the new year, to begin those discussions and make those decisions. Any additional
But
comments?
shifting the money, well, it's still going to, it's
Oh, yeah.
not saving us money unless.
No,
we
it's just
look
moving
at-
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. It's
Yeah.
like, what pocket do you want to take it out of? But, so we're going to have to look at that too, we.
Yeah.
I thought we had maybe cut back a little because of the Chromebooks now that we weren't spending, maybe, I don't know, as much on books and so on.
The world, I think the future world of instructional materials, so under the permanent improvement dollars capital, it fits a certain definition. If I get it wrong, Bart, correct me, but I think it's $500 and 5-year longevity is the general descriptor. So if you buy a textbook, right, and that's going to last 5 years, and you buy that fits.
Right.
But when you start talking about a future of digital curriculum, online subscriptions, devices like this, what we're starting to find is not only what is being produced in the marketplace for instructional materials, but where we think it's going doesn't fit well under the current definition. And so the idea of moving it from, as I put it, that bank account to this bank account, from the capital permanent improvement dollars to the general fund, also means we have a little more latitude in terms of the kinds of things we want to start purchasing. And I think offers opportunities down the line for a different model that has potential for cost savings. I can share, for example, Hilliard City Schools is now working with their teachers and paying them to create digital curriculum. So imagine, not too hard to do, we could work with a group of Algebra 1 math teachers to put together, pay them outside the school day to work on putting digital curriculum together rather than buying traditional Algebra 1 textbooks. I don't think an Algebra 1 textbook is that hard to put together. It's pretty simple, right? It's problem sets and instructions. So there's opportunities down the line when you start thinking about what that world might look like. I'm not saying that's where we're going to be, but
Well,
if you
it
think
does make
futuristically,
sense.
yeah, I think you have to keep an eye on the future.
It makes sense to not have it in the construction, in the capital improvement. I've always questioned that anyway, so I think that makes sense,
Yeah.
that part. But beyond that, what you're talking about, I don't know.
Move and
But
finding ways
Yeah.
to, the charge should be the best instructional materials in the hands of our teachers that we can put there. That should be the charge. And I think there's greater latitude by changing where we take it from and thinking futuristically about what our kids will need and what our teachers can use. And I think there is an opportunity there.
Let me, one last question with Mr. LaRose. 60 students are going to be coming to Central College, and they're not there yet, right?
Correct.
Okay.
They're signed up, they're enrolled. They just recently got the licensure that was needed to operate at that facility. We have occupancy, so everything's ready to go.
Yeah.
Staff is hired. It's just a matter of starting.
Okay, thanks. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Jeff.